I want to look at a recent one of these JD Vance campaign events gone wrong, not only to talk a little bit about minimum wage and different codes that are used for saying, I don't care about the minimum wage, I don't even want a minimum wage, but there's a bigger point that I think is important to illustrate here, which is that there's a sort of underpinning of criticism of the left by the Republican Party that's premised on Democrats, the left. They always want to go further and further with everything. And they apply this to so many different things. You want a $15 minimum wage? Well, next is 100 and then 200 and then 300. And of course, it's never true. And people like me who try to think through these problems empirically would say, well, hold on a second. We can make an inflation adjusted and a productivity adjusted and a cost of living adjusted argument for the minimum wage being between 15 and 22 bucks an hour. I can make no serious argument for the minimum wage being $200 an hour. So you're wrong. The fact that we think the minimum wage should be higher right now doesn't mean that we just think should be higher. It should be higher indefinitely with no connection to the economy. But they love to say Democrats are always going to take everything too far. What I want you to consider as you hear JD Vance here asked, what do you think the minimum wage should be? And not give an answer and actually use code for, I don't even know if we should have a minimum wage, is that this is not about, do we want to go further with everything by electing Kamala Harris versus keeping things the same with Donald Trump? It's actually worse than that. It's, do you want to preserve the things we even have now with Kamala Harris, or do we want to let Republicans take us back the way that they sort of have when it comes to Roe v. Wade? So here's JD Vance in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, asked, what is the position on what the minimum wage should be of Trump Vance? He doesn't answer it, but here's what he does say.
John Cole, Pennsylvania Capital Star, based in Philadelphia. As you talk about the economy, what does the Trump Vance ticket believe the federal minimum wage should be? If Trump gets a second term, would he support raising it, or should it stay the same? And is there a specific number that he would support it at?
Well, look, President Trump believes very strongly that the best way to promote raising Americans' wages is with tight labor markets. When an employer has got to pay a good wage to attract the right people, and you know the way that you destroy, whether you have a higher minimum wage or a lower minimum wage, the way to destroy the wages of American workers is to import 20 million illegal aliens and let them stay here with work visas.
Okay, so he goes totally off track. In order to hide the fact that he's alluding to no minimum wage, he goes off into fantasy land about importing illegal aliens, I think he said, in order to take jobs, all premised on false notions. But let me explain to you that code about how he likes tight labor markets. A tight labor market means there are more job openings than available workers, which leads employers to compete for workers by offering higher wages or better benefits or better working conditions. And what he's alluding to, there's an implied opposition to the minimum wage there, which is instead of setting what they call an artificial price floor, we will deal with the issue of what people should be paid by letting market forces dictate that. And the way you do that is you have more job openings than we do people looking for work. And listen, to call it legitimate or illegitimate is sort of passing value judgment on it. And I do have judgment about it, but it's kind of like libertarian market oriented economics in a sense. And it's perfectly reasonable in a way to say, well, we shouldn't artificially be setting some irrational price floor for labor, $200 an hour, which no one is suggesting. What we have to recognize is that it is not a perfectly efficient market, and we have very disproportionate market power when you consider employers as well as employees. And even in a situation where you would think the employees would have all of the bargaining power because there are more jobs available than employees, so they can go and demand whatever, that's only if they're on an even playing field and the employees aren't together. And Republicans oppose unionization and collective bargaining in many ways. So it's funny that JD Vance says, well, we just let the market do it with a tight labor market, let the employees negotiate and so on and so forth. except you make them negotiate as individuals against a corporation with HR and multiple layers of management that's designed, even in a tight labor market, to get what's better for them rather than employees. So it's just a reminder of how, if it were up to JD Vance, there might be no minimum wage whatsoever. But more importantly, it's all based on pretty shaky economics. Now, one other clip from this. Do you support a national abortion ban? He also doesn't answer that. So he's just not answering any questions at these events.
Senator Vance, what's your message to Pennsylvania voters on abortion? Has your opinion changed? Do you think there should be a national ban? Or should it be left up to the states?
By the way, booing it as if it's an illegitimate question when he and Trump have flip-flopped on this issue so many times shows you how successful these people have been at weaponizing their followers against the corporate media.
Look, it's okay. It's all right. It's all right. Look, first of all, I think it's important to be honest about what Donald Trump and I are focused on here.
Okay.
And what Donald Trump and I are focused on is making the American dream affordable again for Pennsylvania families. That is
what I'm hearing there is, what should the minimum wage be? I don't really know if we need a minimum wage. Will you support a national abortion ban? I certainly won't rule it out. And for the campaign that's been going around for nearly a month now, saying Kamala Harris won't answer questions, or she won't answer questions directly or at all, he's not answering any questions. So it's really important. There's a two-layer, we want to try to go as deep as we can with this stuff into the meaning of it all. And so when they don't answer questions, but accuse others of not answering questions, we have to call that out. But we also need to explain the substance or meaning of the questions they aren't answering. And in this particular case, when it comes to a national abortion ban and the minimum wage, it's all very, very ugly.